Never before in American history have we had 3,000 protests on a single day. Never happened. Never been done. But we have also never had a raging megalomaniac, mentally declining fascist with nuclear codes. Now, look, we've had our duds, our share of bad presidents. Jackson was, warmongering bigot. Buchanan sleepwalked us into civil war. Reagan himself was in mental decline when he was launching disastrous military campaigns. But Trump kind of takes all of the worst qualities of American presidents and takes it to 11. And so when we have this historically catastrophic national leadership, what do? Well, we respond on March 28th with an historically enormous display of organized people power. And March 28th, No Kings, it's a day we're intermittently we're calling it No Kings Spring because the ice is finally melting. We're calling it No Kings 3 because it's the third one of these. We've also been calling it No Kings 3000 internally because we now have 3,000 events on the map. But what's the point of all this? Why are we here? What can we hope to accomplish? What do we have left to do between now and the big day? What, you might ask, Leah, is the plan?
Well, we're asking and answering that today. For this week's What the Plan, we're going to go a little bit deeper on the logic of No Kings, what we are going to accomplish, why it is worth all of our time, and what we've got left to do. And as always, we will have a live Q&A about politics, strategy, organizing, and whatever else is on your mind. So welcome to What's the Plan? I am Leah Greenberg, co-ED of Indivisible.
And I'm married to Leah Greenberg, the co-ED of Indivisible. I'm Ezra. Leah, last year, in the lead up to the first No Kings, you had this really great piece that you wrote that made the rounds, and it was titled "The Strategic Logic of the No Kings Protests." Can you talk us through what that was about, and why the hell are we going through all the trouble to do all this?
Yeah. So, it was written because we were hearing this last year. We hear it every time. Why are we doing this? Like, what does a protest accomplish? What is the point of all this? And it's like a super understandable feeling, right? Because everything is horrifying. The scale and the scope of the harm that is currently happening in our country and around the world defies comprehension. There are days when it feels like nothing we do matters or ladders up to anything. But I think I would turn the question around and actually shift and say, what is the logic of authoritarianism? Because authoritarianism, what we are seeing from the Trump White House, is not about any single policy. It is the deportations, the war, the voter suppression. These are real. They're horrific. The underlying logic of what is happening is about manufacturing a sense of power, a sense of inevitability, a sense that Donald Trump is inevitable and the new normal, that MAGA is going to be in power for the long haul, and that the only rational move, whoever you are, whatever you do in American society, is to go along to keep your head down and to protect your own interests. And what is very insidious about that logic is that when people and institutions believe it, they act on it. Law firms, universities, state governments, business, media, we have seen across our country over the last year people who capitulate not because they were forced to do so, but because they looked around and they thought, well, this is how it's going to be so far. I guess I got to go along. And they just decided that was the rational choice. And that is how authoritarianism actually consolidates.
Paul Weiss Law Firm, Columbia University.
Right.
You can pick your capitulator. We all know them out there. Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, that we see them out there, these seemingly powerful figures and institutions who, when Trump comes calling, they ask what should we do, sir? And then they do it.
Right. And that is how autocracy actually consolidates. It is not through brute force. It is through the manufacture of consent. And here's the thing. The aura of inevitability is a lie. It is a lie. Or more specifically, it is a bluff. Trump's grasp is brittle. He is dramatically overreaching. His political capital is collapsing. He is only going to succeed in anything that he is trying to do if enough people agree to believe the bluff and act accordingly. And so the first and most fundamental purpose of No Kings is to call that bluff. We are doing a massive, distributed, joyful, multiracial show of resistance in every state, thousands of communities all on the same day, and it is intended to do something that, all of the formal mechanisms of resistance, the op-eds and the lawsuits and the congressional investigations can't do. It can show that Donald Trump does not have the people on its side. It can disrupt the aura of inevitability. It calls the bluff. So the goal of what we're doing is to halt that authoritarian consolidation. The strategy is to foster mass defiance everywhere. And this week, the tactic is No Kings. It's part of that overarching strategy. Now, what does a No Kings actually do? It does three things. First, it brings in new people. That is not just about getting people to one protest. It is about getting people to take an on-ramp into ongoing civic engagement. Folks who come out for a No Kings, get invited to a follow-up meeting. They show up to that follow-up meeting. Suddenly, they are trained on Ice Watch. Suddenly, they are organized and supporting mutual aid in their community. Suddenly, they are advocating to their elected officials. We're trying to get to 3.5% of the population into that sustained, organized engagement. We are not there yet, but every one of these brings us closer.
That 3.5%, that comes from the political science research. That's Erica
Mhm.
Chenoweth and Maria Stephan, who have done research on, so when a fascist comes into office, when they are actually able to get some amount of power and they try to cling to power, they try to concentrate that power, what is necessary to get them out, to prevent them from consolidating control? And what they have found is 3.5% of the population. You don't need a majority. You need 3.5% actively engaged.
That's right. That's right. So that's the first thing is we are bringing in new people with these giant tentpole index events. And the second thing we're doing is we are building a collective identity. We are in big cities and tiny towns in red areas, and we are asking everyone to lean in and feel connected and feel like we are part of a massive collective fighting for our neighbors and fighting for our democracy together. We normalize opposition in places that might be hostile. We normalize this kind of active civic engagement everywhere. We are collectively, creating the social proof that this is something that we all do. We all do it together. The other thing that we do, the final thing is we spread courage. This is core to the theory of the case, right? We fuel organic acts of resistance. After every major protest, we hear from people inside institutions, law firms, universities, all of the venues that are being fought over in American society who say they're pushing back more because they saw the protest, because they felt the energy, because they understood that they were part of something. This is the core idea, right? Courage is contagious, and massive visible mobilizations are one of the most effective ways we spread it.
That's right. So I I want to build on what Leah said with a little bit of insight into where No Kings 3 is right now. We are, or call it No Kings 3000, or call it No Kings Spring, whatever you want to call it March 28th, because I think that's what it's going to be known for years to come. And I want to talk about two things in particular that I hope are practical for folks who are listening to this, because if you are listening to this, you know about No Kings. You are paying attention to politics at a level that most people are not, and you want it to be successful. So I think the best thing we can do here is talk about practically how can we make this successful. And there are two areas that I think we should be paying attention to right now. One is about hosting these events, and the other is about recruiting for these events. So just to kick off on hosting, a big part of the strategic logic, Leah, that you were talking about is the idea that this needs to be everywhere, that there needs to be opposition to the regime in every community. And we've been building on that now for, gosh, a year. Hands off, the first major protest of the second Trump era was on April of 2025. And we had 3 million people out at 1,300 events. And at the time, that was enormous. It was historic. We were elated that so many people had come out. Then we had No Kings 1 in June, and we had 2,100 events and 5 million people. And then we had No Kings 2 in October, and we had 2,700 events with 7 million people. And now, as I speak to y'all right now in March of 2026, headed into March 28th, No Kings 3, there are more than 3,000 events on the map if you go to nokings.org. More than 3,000 events. Like I said, never been done before. This country has never seen this before, and they're all over. I pulled a list of the events by state. The team got it together. There are hundreds of events all across the state of California, but it's not just California. There are 100 or more in Oregon, Minnesota, Illinois, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Texas, Florida, Washington, Michigan, New York, and Massachusetts. If you're thinking about going on vacation, maybe head to Hawaii, where there are 12 No Kings events on every single island in the state. Or you might want to go to Puerto Rico or the U.S. Virgin Islands, where you will also find No Kings events. And maybe because this regime leader that we have is also launching unconstitutional and illegal wars of choice, we're also seeing No Kings events all over the world. All over the world, y'all. We're talking in Germany, in France, in the UK, in Canada, in Spain, in Switzerland, Portugal, Italy, Greece, Netherlands, Mexico, Australia, Ireland, Sweden. People are standing up. People are standing up right now, and we're standing up together against this regime. And uh, I think in the United States, we're going to see incredible flagship events in the Twin Cities and in Chicago and in New York and elsewhere. There are going to be these giant events. That's cool. That's great. I want to see those crowds out there. But I got to say, I'm from rural Texas, and I am thrilled to see the representation of small towns in rural and red America really well represented. Coloma, California, population of about 370 has a No Kings event. Gustavus, Alaska, population about 612 has a No Kings event. We've got Arco, Idaho, population 930, No Kings event. I looked up the small town in Texas where I'm from. In between Buda, Texas and Kyle, Texas is where I grew up. Kyle, Texas has a No Kings event. It's everywhere. So what I hope people take away from this is not, oh, good, we did it. It's not over. It's not done. I do I can guess the question on all of your mind though. And the answer is yes. We are in touch with the Guinness Book of World Records right now. Actually, literally we are. So this very well might wind up as a legitimate world record in the book in the not too distant future. But we're not just saying, great, we hit 3,000 and we're done. Everybody who's listening to this, you have until March 26th to get your No Kings protest registered. Thursday, end of day, March 26th. If you register your protest, we'll be able to get it on the map. And the way that I would think about whether you should do that or not is go to the No Kings map, look up where you live, what your community is, literally where your house is, and see, is the nearest No Kings protest within 30 minutes to an hour of where you live? If it's not, if it's further away, if you've really got to drive a far ways to get there, bring your community together. It can be a handful of friends and family members and colleagues, and get your No Kings event on the map. I know this might be a stretch for some of us. Some of us haven't done a big protest thing before. We don't think of ourselves as organizers. Here's what I will say. If you've thrown a birthday party, you can throw No Kings protest. You can do it. Every single one of the 3,000 events on that map was put together by somebody like you who looked around and said, oh, shit, I guess I've got to do this. And they did it, and they're doing it, and they're making history. You can do it too. And if you're nervous about it, go to nokings.org. There are a ton of trainings on safety and de-escalation and marketing and how to structure the events and how to recruit. You can do this. You can do this. Let me tell you, you can do this. You have until Thursday, March 26th to get that event together. But let's say you've got the event already. It's already there. You know it. Either your group has already put it together or it's nearby in your city, and so you're planning to go. Like I said, I know you're planning to go. You're listening to this. You've already made plans to go. Now we collectively have to work on recruitment. We have to work on recruitment. March 28th is right around the corner. So we've got to do the work to pull our communities in. And I want to be clear, y'all, this is a grassroots operation. It legitimately is. Whoever watched the Oscars, there's a reason why you didn't see some big fancy ad for No Kings. We don't have a multi-million-dollar ad campaign. That's not how Hands Off went viral. That's not how No Kings 1 went viral. That's not how No Kings 2 went viral. That's not how No Kings 3 is going to become the largest protest in American history. The way it's going to get there is by word of mouth, by people talking to people. That's how it spreads. So my challenge to folks on this call, folks who are listening to this, I want to propose a tactic to you because it's a tactic that's worked very well in electoral campaigns, and we believe it can work well in this context. And it's the idea of vote tripling. The idea of vote tripling is simple. You have 3 people in your network who you work to get out to vote. And what the research finds is that if you do that, you significantly increase the chances that those people go out to vote and you multiply your impact. It sounds really simple, but the basic idea is people are less likely to listen to some digital ad or some politician or some talking head, but they're pretty likely to listen to somebody in their community, somebody who's their neighbor, somebody who's their friend or their family member or their colleague. Let's apply that exact same logic to building the largest protests in American history. Really, it's just the exact same logic. You are reaching out to people who are in your community who do agree that, look, things aren't going well. We're not happy with what this regime is doing. And they might be outside the political system. Maybe they don't trust Democrats. They don't like Republicans. They probably vote, but they don't think of themselves as organizers or advocates, and they're not protesters exactly. Well, you don't have to ask them for something. That's not what this is about. You get to offer them something. You get to give them an invitation to the best freaking community party that we're going to see in early 2026. And they get to be part of it with you. You get to invite them to it. I would think of it as a gift. You are doing them a favor. Now, They get to be part of this if they choose to accept the gift. Not everybody's going to accept the gift. That's cool. That's okay. Don't stop giving. Don't stop giving. Keep on having these conversations with folks at the water cooler, at work, with your parents, with your kids, with your uncles, with your cousins. It's okay to have these conversations. It might be a little bit unusual, might be a little bit uncomfortable at first, but remember what Leah said, what the experts and authoritarians say. The authoritarians want you to feel alone. That's what they want you to feel. They want you to be isolated and alienated from your community. Even just having these conversations, even just offering the gift of an invite to be part of something with you, that alone is an act of defiance. If we all do this, we're breaking through 3.5%.
Yeah,
We are
that's right.
busting through that ceiling. We are going to recruit more people in this movement, and this regime is going to be a thing of the past before we know it.
I
Leah?
wanna I wanna lift up I try to scan as the comments go by as best I can, and I just wanna lift up one from Terry Norton because what she says perfect. "You can do this, people. We did our first protest ever in a small red rural town. Less than 20 of us put it together, yet we had almost 100 people show up, and there's never been a protest in this little red county in Tennessee before, but we did it, and you can too."
Hell yeah. They did
There
it.
we
You
go. That
can
is the
too.
energy we are taking into next week. Thank you,
That is
Terry.
that is indeed the energy, Terry. Thank you. I'm thankful that there are millions of Terrys right now
Yep.
all across the world who are
Mhm.
doing this exact same thing. You are not alone. And if you put that event on the map, what you're going to find out is just how not alone you are. How many people were dying to be part of something real in their community. You get to give that to them. You get to be
Yep.
part of that.
That's right.
Uh,
That's
What a
right.
privilege and an honor. I went a little bit long, Leah. I'm sorry. We should go to questions. For everybody listening on the podcast, the way we get these questions is people ask them in real time and vote on them in real time, and then we answer them in real time. So should we get to the Q&A, Leah?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, we are going to take these in the from top voted and down. The very top question is where to focus for no kings: Middle East, Ukraine, Epstein, ICE and DHS funding, DOJ, FBI, vaccines, corruption. The list goes on and on and on. Leah, I think this is a great question. I think we have a couple of ideas of what's top of mind for many folks, but when people say there's so much shit going down right now,
Yeah.
what is the no kings that we're doing about? What should we focus on? What's your response?
Yeah, I would say that first of all, you have a better sense of your community and you should lean into the things that you think are going to be activating wherever you are. Some places that might be more about ICE. Some places that may be more about corruption. That's trust your judgment. But if there's a core story here, it's that we are all collectively responding to violent, threatening, authoritarian governance that is attacking our rights and our neighbors and our democracy so that a small group of people can loot the government for themselves and and benefit and concentrate their own power, and that covers really everything. And so I think that what I would focus on is like, is that core story coming through? Because the whole idea with No Kings is that the scale and the scope of harm is coming so fast that we can't just go, we're going to have protests for this issue, we're going to have protests for that issue, we're going to protest for this issue. We are experiencing the kind of rapid onslaught in which the only path forward is to link arms and stand together and treat an attack on one as an attack on all and collectively push back. Something about the way people are getting news, people are processing news, people are hearing the media ecosystem. What we've seen is that it is the collective pushback that invites everyone to show up for whatever reason animates them that seems to work best in a moment like this. And so part of the way that we got to know Kings was actually trying to create a container that could hold the sheer horror of what is happening on every possible front and also offer the flexibility for people to lean in to the messages and the frames that they see are working. Now, a couple things that I do think are important. Since we announced, we've seen both a violent, unaccountable, secret, unconstitutional secret police force rampaging across the country, and we have seen an illegal, unconstitutional, unbelievably dangerous war of choice by Donald Trump abroad. And both of those things are opportunities to reach out to people who maybe were not previously involved, maybe weren't paying a ton of attention, with an entirely new story about what is going on and the harm that it is going to do to you and your community, and to lean in that moment. So those, I think, are very important angles to really focus on as we are talking to people about what is happening and why we are collectively coming out. But ultimately, you got to think about who you're talking to and what's going to activate them.
1,000%. Hear a lot. I was talking with somebody yesterday, and they had sign anxiety. They were like, "What do I put on my sign? I need to know like what's the message that we're all doing." And my advice is put on your sign what resonates with you. If it resonates with you, it's likely to resonate with others. If you are most concerned about the war, talk about the war. If you're most concerned about the secret police force that's terrorizing our communities, put that on your sign. If you're most concerned about Epstein, put that on your sign. That's okay.
Yeah.
We are intentionally allowing folks to speak to what moves them, and from that comes this cacophony of voices. And you're going to find a lot of friends who believe what you believe if you do that. Next question comes from Sharon. Our government is rapidly accelerating attacks on democracy on so many fronts at once: unauthorized war, taking over media, um, disappearing people into concentration camps, and who knows where else, interfering with the elections, potentially destroying the USPS, arresting, attacking, and killing protesters, putting Trump's face on government buildings and coins. With the administration tactics accelerating, are our tactics meeting the moment? What are suggestions avoiding overwhelm and, in fact, upping our game? I love this. This kind of
Mm.
builds on the last question. The last question was about what messages we have, but like this is about just strategically, they're shooting us with a fire hose right now. Is a once in a while massive protest enough, Leah?
That is a great question. And the answer is it is not enough on its own. Please, if you ever listen to us, never ever take away the impression that we think that a single march or a single protest is going to fix things, right? We've got an overarching strategy of fostering mass defiance everywhere that pushes back in 1,000 different ways. One of the visible manifestations of that is going to be these massive marches, right? And those are gonna be important because they are recruitment moments, they are narrative interventions, they are, catalysts of organizing in places that might not have an organizing hub, right? I bet Terry and her town in Tennessee have a bunch of people who kept meeting after they had that first protest. That's the power of one of these big events. And also, it's one in a bunch of things that have to happen collectively, right? So if folks think, "Oh, I went to a protest and I've done my job," well, actually, the protest is an invitation into ongoing work in your community that's gonna look different in different places, but could look like immigrant defense, mutual aid, pushing your elected representatives to take as strong a stance as possible, electoral work, protecting our elections. There's gonna be a ton we have to do across a whole host of fronts in order to, actually push back. And, I think it's worth pulling out, Hardy Merriman, who's an expert in nonviolent resistance, talks about how under authoritarianism, most of the time things feel really, really shitty. Uh, they do a bunch of stuff that we actually cannot successfully stop. We do not have the power to stop. And so you have to think about it not in terms of are you able to stop things one to one, but is the movement growing? Are you getting new people in? Are you diversifying your tactics? Are you trying new things? Are you reaching out to different constituencies? These are actually the metrics of success. So for us, No Kings is one of the tactics. We're going to roll right into May Day after No Kings, right? And that is going to be a day in which we collectively push for no business as usual. Mobilized, sure, but no work, no school, no shopping. We're actually going to test what happens when the collective group of us all push together to say, this is not normal. And so we're not going to show up in a normal way today. So that's going to be a new tactical shift. Like, we got to hold the things that we're good at and continue to do them in order to build strength. And we've got to try and diversify those tactics.
Just to underline, May Day is coming next. That is May 1st. I think that's really important what Leah just said here. I would think of No Kings as like the big blockbuster event where people who aren't normally involved say, okay, I'll go to the No Kings. In our dream scenario, they then get plugged into your local community, whether that's 5051 or Indivisible or Working Families Party or Move On, whatever it is, your local community, they get plugged in there. And then we make a big showing for May Day. That is the immediate goal. Sabrina asks, can Indivisible National consider a campaign to establish Indivisible clubs at local high schools as well as on socials?
Mm,
Um, we have talked about this. And
yeah.
in fact, some of it has happened organically, right, Leah? We've seen Indivisible groups form partnerships with colleges or with high schools and have seen local Indivisible groups form in high schools and colleges. We're down with this. Look, we like this. Indivisible is grassroots led. It's grassroots owned and operated. That's how these groups get started. If there are high school students that are interested in starting, we'd love to see it. I do think there are really productive partnerships that can form between existing Indivisible groups and new Indivisible groups with younger folks who are in college or in high schools. I think it's a great idea. So we have some resources that are available. We don't have like a full-on campaign to establish it, though, Leah. It might be
That's
worth
right.
talking a little bit about our work with colleges right now, though. Leah, do you want to talk about the campaigns there?
Sure, sure. I will just say on the high school side of this, I would not wait for Indivisible National because there are walkouts that are taking place all
Yes.
over the
Oh, great
country.
point.
They have
Great
been
point. Yep.
happening on a rolling basis over the last couple of months. Those are students who are, really like you should approach and figure out who those folks are in your community if they're organizing one, figure out what support they need. And, it's not about necessarily having them under the Indivisible brand, although obviously they're very, very welcome to have a chapter, but it is about making sure that wherever somebody starts to, organize and coordinate their community, they immediately have support, especially because students can be like a vulnerable population. Schools have threatened retaliation for walkouts, and in some cases,
Hmm.
elected officials have gotten involved. I feel like the entire government of Texas has tried to come down on these high school students across Texas who've organized walkouts to protest ICE. So, you organizing to help and support is actually a really powerful possible intervention and partnership building strategy.
Just
Um,
shout out to the students in Hayes County, where I grew up, Texas, who did do one of these walkouts and did face some backlash. Really, really proud to see them out there.
That's right. Now, the other thing that Ezra mentioned is our Courage Collective work. So, one of the ways in which we've stretched and tried to organize differently in this time is we're asking people to think not just in terms of your geographic community, right? Most indivisible groups are about organizing people who are part of your town or your city. But actually thinking about in terms of your affiliations, your identities, the different ways in which you are active in pillars of society that impact whether we go along with authoritarianism and fight back. And colleges and universities have been one of the key venues of contestation under the Trump administration. There's a reason they went after Columbia so early. Whether there's a reason that they have spent all of this time on these compacts with colleges that they're trying to push. They think that it is incredibly important for cultural and political and power-based reasons to dominate the higher education sector in this country. What we've asked folks to do is if you are part of an institution, if you are an alumni, if you are a student, if you are a faculty member, actually get organized into what we call a Courage Collective, which is a vehicle for organizing stakeholders within an institution to mount pushback to these Trump attacks on higher education. And so we've got we'll share information on how to sign up if that sounds like something that you might be interested in doing based on your status as an alumni or a student. We think this is a really powerful way to level the playing field because fundamentally this isn't necessarily and the kind of attack that colleges and campuses are used to, and it matters a lot that there are organized stakeholders pushing back.
That's right. Jeff asks, this is Jeff from Camel's Hump Indivisible in Richmond, Vermont. You have said that the SAVE Act is really bad, but you felt it had virtually no chance of passing and therefore was not a primary concern. I've seen polls saying that a majority of Americans support passing the SAVE Act. Majority Leader Senator Thune is receiving tremendous pressure to abandon the filibuster in order to pass the SAVE Act on a majority vote. Do you still feel it is only a remote possibility that the SAVE Act will pass the Senate? And for folks who aren't following, the SAVE Act is effectively a voter suppression act. It is intended to make it more difficult for folks to vote, specifically more difficult for people who are more likely to vote Democratic to vote. It is the kind of thing that Republicans put forward because they fear the voters. They do not want the voters to be able to vote because if the voters vote, then they might lose power. This is the exact same impulse behind the gerrymandering campaigns that they kicked off in Texas and elsewhere. It is why they unified against the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. It is why they are consistently seeking ways to undermine the elections because they understand how deeply unpopular their agenda is. It's also the reason why Trump is openly talking about doing all sorts of things from canceling the election, which he doesn't have the power to do, to sabotaging the results in some way. This all comes from the same place. So I don't want to act as if the SAVE Act is a nothing burger and we shouldn't be paying attention to it. I think this is part of an overall attack on voting rights and democracy that we're seeing from this fascist party that is deeply afraid of organized nonviolent people power, both on the ground and in the form of the voting, in the form of voting. And also, Jeff, we are existing at a time where we have threats all around us and we have to prioritize. And I hear you citing a poll that says the majority of Americans passed Saving the Act. I would offer that the majority of Americans don't know what the hell the SAVE Act is. This
That's
is
right.
not something that most people are paying attention to. I'm sure you could describe the bill in some way that makes some number of people say, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. The reason why we're not running active campaign right now on this is because we're simultaneously battling a secret police force that is actively in this moment terrorizing American communities and setting up concentration camps. We are actively building towards the largest protest in American history, which may or may not come off, except if we all do the work together. So I don't want to tell you, don't worry about it, ignore it, move on to other things. I think people should be calling their senator and should be calling their representative to tell them oppose this bill. But currently, and I tell you all this every week, and as soon as it changes, I will be the first to yell about this. Currently, we don't see a pathway through the Senate because it
No.
requires 60 votes or it requires the Republicans to agree blowing up the filibuster. I think possibly had they tried this a year ago when Trump
Yeah.
was riding high in the polls, when the Democrats were very weak and were refusing to oppose it all, I think they might have been able to get it done. That's how they got the Laken Riley Act through. Look, Laken Riley Act in early 2025, a terrible bill that empowers ICE further, that strips immigrants of their rights. People like Angie Craig, who's now voting or running for Senate in Minnesota and yells about how bad ICE is, voted for Laken Riley back in January of last year. So there's a chance back then Trump might have been able to muscle it through. I don't see it right now. I don't see it right now. We should stay on alert. We should look to see if there are signs that it shifts, but currently it's not the top of my list of threats. Leah, any
I
update on your end?
I agree with that, and I do wanna underscore the, like, maybe if he tried a year ago point, because I think it's important to relate all of the work we're doing back to what political outcomes Trump is able to obtain, right? Because fundamentally, there was a period where he had more political capital, and maybe he could have strong-armed all of these Republican senators into going along with him. What we have collectively been doing over the last year has helped to drain his political
Yeah,
capital
that's
to the
right. That's
point
right.
where Trump's ability to compel all of these people to go against their own long-term instincts and reform or and blow up the filibuster is is dramatically lessened. And so I think it's a mistake to say, "Oh, over here is protesting in general to express that Trump doesn't have the people with him, and over there is campaigning on the SAVE Act," because actually a very, very large show of popular opposition to Donald Trump continues to keep him in the place where he does not have the political capital to compel cooperation from some of these folks.
There's a saying, popular presidents get what they want, unpopular ones don't. Trump's approval is
Is that
very,
a
very,
saying?
very low. Yeah, that is a saying. And Mayor Collins,
Huh,
I think it's
huh,
got a famous person behind it. I will look it
okay,
up and report back next week.
okay, alright. I
Wait,
thought you just
and
made that up.
I can't mention Angie Craig without also mentioning Peggy Flanagan, the incredible lieutenant governor from Montana, endorsed by the Minnesota statewide Indivisible Alliance, endorsed by National Indivisible, and who will be headlining the No Kings event in the Twin Cities on March 28th. Please check out Peggy Flanagan. She's also running for Senate. Incredible leader, incredible candidate. Avon has the next question. Does Indivisible know if there is anyone planning or running a fundraising campaign to legally pursue every kind of shenanigan with regard to the election this year, like voter suppression shenanigans, I assume, or sabotage shenanigans? I hear Jasmine Crockett is planning to file a lawsuit over the alleged voting irregularities in her Texas Senate primary race. We need every one of the election shenanigans to be pursued in court as this midterm year goes on, and this will require finances. Yes, question mark. Leah, we saw a little bit of this in Texas with Republicans playing around in Dallas,
Yeah, yep,
delaying the
mhm,
vote. I
coalesce.
think this is the kind of thing, but amped up, that we're going to
Yeah.
see in a lot of red states this year, right?
Yes, and the short answer is there are a number of different very, on the ball organizations that will both be doing the lawsuits and kind of the organizing around the lawsuits that is gonna be necessary in this period. We've gotten an increasingly sophisticated anti-election sabotage infrastructure that's layered on top of a lot of the election protection, voter protection work that has been ongoing for an extended period of time. Folks like All Voting is Local, many indivisibles work directly with. There will definitely be a lot of folks on our side who are ready to do the legal challenges that are necessary around all of the irregularities, all of the manipulation and subversion attempts that we are expecting to come up. What I think is going to be really important for us is that, there's the actual legal process, and then there is the environment in which that legal process is taking place. And the role of a lot of us is going to be to shape the environment via protest, via local organizing in the hotspots so that we can interpret anything that happens as unjust and, raise a national stink about it. That is going to be the work of the grassroots people power. It's going to be stuff like poll monitoring, showing up at a county clerk's office when they're trying to pull a shenanigan, all of the stuff that actually shapes how the election takes place, and then whether the results are understood as just or unjust, that is going to be our role.
That's right. Um, Good question for Mary. This has come up a couple times. I think it's the first time I've seen a question come up on what's the plan on this, though. Mary asks, we've observed that people are hesitating to sign up, fear of being on a list, maybe, whether it is through our website, through Mobilize, using our QR codes. Have others observed this? What are some creative ideas out there for encouraging people to sign up so we can communicate with them further about events and actions? Leah, we saw some
Yeah.
online discourse about this headed into No Kings 2. I think it's been percolating in some online communities that there's some fear that you'll wind up on some list and then the regime's going to come after you.
Yeah.
You've written some good stuff on this too. Do you want to
Yeah.
talk about the current status of like getting people to sign up so they can be
Yeah.
part of these events and part of organizing efforts?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a couple of pieces here. I think one is concern about the safety implications of saying I'm going to RSVP to this protest, I'm going to RSVP to this rally. And in that situation, I would say, as with any situation where you're assessing whether you're going to be involved in some kind of protest or organizing activity, you have to make an assessment of your own risk first, right? If you are somebody who has reason to believe that you might be exposed to retaliation, if you are somebody who is, part of a vulnerable community or a marginalized community that is being repressed by the administration, you got to make judgments about exactly how much exposure you want, and that is completely appropriate and okay. And also, the RSVP lists they're one of several tools we use to plan, and it is not the case that it matters the most in the world for us as an Indivisible National if we have your email. Like it's fine. We don't need to have your email. It is helpful to have a general sense of how many people are planning to come to these events, right? Because fundamentally that helps us make decisions about, where do we need to layer extra resources? Where do we need to think about additional safety measures and safety marshals? Like what are the actual practical implications of, having the ability to plan a little bit better? That's gotten harder as people have gotten more skeptical about emails and giving out their email addresses, about registering, et cetera, et cetera. It's not uncommon. It's not unusual. I have talked to folks from other countries that say, yeah, this is around the time in the kind of would-be authoritarian cycle where people get real nervous about putting their names on lists. And, it's just one of the dynamics that we have to deal with. One thing that I will say, and this is like a little bit of a hard pivot into ideas for combating this, is I think there's signing people up in advance, which is kind of a solitary activity. You're on your computer and somebody's asking you to RSVP via a form, versus signing people up in real time at an event like a No Kings event, right? And actually doing it where you affirmatively ask people, right? There's a difference between having a QR code on a poster that somebody's got to look at and click and do the form themselves versus having a volunteer who has a clipboard and says, hey, we're having a next meeting next week. We're going to talk about the following things. If you'd like to be involved, give us your email address and we will send you more information. That is a human who is talking to you about something that you
Yes,
will get
yes, yes,
out of
yes.
the
Yeah.
experience of signing up and like why it is good and useful for you to be part of this process and giving them something meaningful to continue to be involved in. And this is actually a really good segue for me to note that if you are hosting one of these events, if you are helping to co-organize, one of the asks that we are going to have for you is going to be to pre-plan a what's next after No Kings event. This is not for everybody. We recognize that some people are not going to be able to do that while also planning the No Kings event, but put something on the calendar for the next couple of weeks after No Kings for your group that's intended to be an onboarding space, that's intended to be an absorption space for people who came out and are maybe curious, like, how do I stay involved? What could I do? We're actually going to be building out a training that's specific for people who are people who are organizing those around some shared national
Yeah.
content about understanding what are we all doing here together? What's our strategy? What's the arc of the year? How are we preparing for stuff like election sabotage? And we'll share that and train you on it on the 26th. If you are a host, look out for the email. If not, will have very similar content for everybody on the 31st. So basically, we're going to make sure that we get everybody collectively some content that they can share at meetings that you use to build and absorb people in. And so that is my very specific guidance is think about not just signing people up before the event, but like a hard ask to do something in person afterwards that gives people a reason to give you their contact information.
Humans talking to humans. What an innovative idea, Leah. I wonder if anybody's tried that before.
I
It
know.
sounds like it just might work. Hey, I found the quote also, Leah. It's from 1993. It's an absolute rule up here. Popular presidents get what they want, unpopular ones don't. That was in a New York Times article in 1993 about the then recently elected Clinton, who was trying to get through an ambitious agenda, and then it all fell apart and he got demolished in the midterms. I do think the work that we're doing to drive down the approval ratings of this regime are incredibly important for what comes in the next several months. It will not just help us in the elections in the midterms, it will make it more difficult for Trump to pull these shenanigans and sabotage in any way. Craig from Indivisible Honolulu asks, what is the most effective way to email my representatives, or I assume message my representatives? Emailing works best for me. I understand calling is best, but ... What are the best ways to get my thoughts across? I use bullet points, such as this example, and it's like Save Act, it's Iran war, supplemental war funding. It's a list of issues. And then Craig asks, is this sufficient? Should I instead do one topic per email? Should I provide my reasoning? Thank you for your weekly updates. And you find them very, very valuable. Thank you very much, Craig. This is such a great question for me and Leah. We are both former congressional staffers. We both answered a lot of constituent mail. We both tallied up a lot of incoming communications from constituents. So we have a lot of thoughts on what works when you're actually trying to communicate with your reps. Leah, do you want to start about the best tried and true practices for having your voice tallied up when it comes to pushing your representative or senator on something?
Yeah, so I would say single means of communication on a single topic. Because the way that this is working is that there's a staffer on the other end. They are looking at your email and they're kind of like and the way that they file that into the system is usually related to like one topic specifically and like kind of a con or anti. So like I'll just
Yep.
take your example. I am an overworked staffer. I have to get through a massive stack of content. I look at your thing and I'm like, okay, he doesn't want the SAVE Act to pass. Okay, so I'm gonna put him in SAVE Act Con, and that's the category that I'm gonna put that entire email in, and I'm probably just gonna hit, close and keep going. Um, if you want to have every communication registered, I would contact people different or at different times on different topics in order to ensure that the person actually has to close it out by ascribing it to each topic.
What I would also recommend, 1,000% agree with what Leah said. At the end of the day, your message has to be coded in some way, and so if you
Yep.
make it clear the way it's got to be coded, great. What you do not need to do is your long essay about
Right.
why you are against the Save Act. Not
Yep.
important. They don't
It all
care.
counts the same way.
I'm sorry to tell you, Greg, they do not care about your strategic logic. They do care that an actual constituent of theirs opposes this and is watching. And so that brings me to the next point. Said this a lot. I would recommend giving your name and your address and your contact information and specifically request a response. You want to request a response because when you request a response, you get to follow up next week and say, "Hey, buddy, I emailed last week, never got a response." And what that does is it makes that underpaid junior staffer nervous that somebody might call him out and say, "Hey, Craig emailed again. Did you not get a response? Did Craig not get tallied?" You want to be tallied, so you should trust that these staffers are trying to do the best they can, but also trust but verify and try to get that response. And email is fine. Look, email can get tallied for those offices that do indeed want to listen to you. Calls, I do prefer calls if you can get through, but keep in mind, there are a set of tactics that are about providing your preferences to the representative, and you can do that privately. And that's a good tactic for a representative that gives a shit, that actually cares what their constituent thinks and cares what you think. If, for whatever reason, either through incompetence or malice, your representative or senator doesn't ever respond, doesn't ever take in your feedback, doesn't actually change their positions, at that point, you should start considering a set of tactics that aren't private, that look like public opposition. They can be op-eds. They could be going to the congressional office, which there are local offices all around the district. It could be holding a protest or calling them out at a No Kings event or some other event. But you should keep in mind private tactics where you're just expressing your opinions are suitable in some cases, and public tactics are suitable in other cases. We should all be using a nice collection of tactics that feed up to different strategies to help get our representatives to actually represent us. Fun topic. We always like to think about how we can push Congress. That's how we got started. Dory asks, ICE is surging agents and attorneys into 150 new offices across the country. In addition to other actions, we are doing community outreach in our neighborhood around the federal building where ICE already delivered new vehicles. We're using the signs of solidarity and Know Your Rights cards, but they were hard to find. Please refresh the campaigns on indivisible.org's homepage. Thank you for all you do. That's Dory with Woodland Hills Indivisibles in LA. I love that you're using signs of solidarity. Love that you're using the Know Your Rights card. We sent out God knows how many Know Your Rights cards for the No Kings protest last time, Leah.
Mhm.
Anything you want to say about the current the opening of the new ICE offices or the work that we're doing to build up campaigns against ICE?
Yeah, well, here's what I would say macro level. Dory, this is great. And whoever you are, whatever wherever your indivisible group is located, there is something you can be doing to make it more difficult for ICE to operate on your turf. Whether that is looking at a warehouse campaign, we've got a bunch of people who are throwing in to push back on these warehouses that ICE is buying around the country and trying to convert into detention facilities. I say that with air quotes because there's just no world in which you can humanely house people in these places,
Also known as concentration camps.
also known as concentration camps, right? So warehouse campaigns, signs of solidarity is a great option if you're trying to get a group of people involved. For folks who aren't familiar with this is a campaign where basically we ask you and your indivisible group or whatever your collective is to go to local business owners to educate them on their Fourth Amendment rights and to encourage them to put a sign in their window that makes clear that ICE is not welcome and that you know your rights in this workplace. And so the basic idea here is both that you're creating more of a visible community pushback and you are educating people to exercise their rights at the same time. And so it's a really powerful way to start to pull more people off the sidelines and into active involvement. Great campaign to pick up. We take the feedback about making it more visible. Handing out Know Your Rights cards, also great. There's a lot of there's also
Well,
partnering with your local immigrant rights group to have an ICE watch training. There's a lot of different ways you can get involved.
There,
Ezra.
there, there are. Just want to note, we literally just in the last few days, we have hired a full-time senior level immigrant defense staffer for Indivisible National that's going to be helping all around the country. We were very excited. We started looking for this position a while ago. They're going to be on board soon. So Dory, I appreciate your input here, and I hope more folks who are joining us here are raising these issues, whether it's around the concentration camps or the new ICE offices or atrocities that we're seeing the secret police force commit. Because Indivisible wants to lean in hard here. I think this is the tip of the spear of the regime. They're using the secret police force to try to cow us into submission. They're going to use this secret police force not just to target immigrants. That's where they're starting. They're going to target all of us. They're going to use it to try to menace us around Election Day too. So we're taking this very seriously. We're trying to staff up appropriately. So please keep on leaning in. And if we're not producing things that are meeting the mark, let us know. We're trying to support as
Yeah.
best we can, but we know we can do better.
That's right. And I want to also shout out Project Saltbox, which is doing a bunch of the tracking of warehouses around the country, and Siembra, North Carolina, which has been
Yes,
really
yes,
an
yes,
incubator
yes.
of a lot of incredibly creative work, including the Fourth Amendment workplace campaigning.
Yep. Stephen asks, Stephen from Indivisible Chicago, what are some things we can do to use this No Kings moment to get loud about the war in Iran and the economic chaos it is causing? And also, how can No Kings get more people voting and volunteering in critical elections this spring? Take those separately. One thing I would say is I hope everybody saw that the Pentagon is currently planning to request $200 billion more for this illegal and unconstitutional war. $200 billion is what they're going to come hat in hand to Congress and ask for us, for all of us, to spend so that Donald Trump can launch more missiles at elementary schools in Iran and obliterate school children. That's what they're going to ask for. So I think it is very important when we're messaging this to be able to make both points. Like it's a 1-2 punch on this. One, nobody wanted this fucking war. Nobody
Yep.
wanted it. We all opposed it. We did not vote for this guy. If you voted for him for this war, he explicitly promised no wars. We don't want it. And two, instead of lowering the prices of your eggs or your gas or your bread or your housing, instead of making it easier for you to get a job, instead of doing anything for economic development, this guy is off in La La Land launching new wars and taking money out of your pocket to fund them. So I think combining the two arguments, yes, he's a fascist, yes, he's an authoritarian, yes, this war is evil and bad and we should oppose it, and also he's doing jack shit for you. He's taking the money out of your pocket instead of helping you out. These two arguments go together. There are some people that are going to come to us because they're anti-war. There are some people that are going to be angry at the regime because they don't feel like their life is better. We need to make this world make sense to them and explain to them the reason why your life isn't getting any better is because Donald Trump doesn't give two flying fucks about you. He is out there self-enriching himself and trying to distract from his own corruption by launching these wars that are costing you money instead of helping you out. So I think there's a big opportunity with No Kings to make a big deal about this illegal and unconstitutional war. I would love to see a lot of focus out there on that because I think there are a set of people who, for whatever reason, up until this point, we're not super engaged, we're not paying attention, but they're not going to like the fact that Donald Trump is directly betraying them, including Trump voters, betraying what he promised to do and directly harming them as he engages in shit that nobody actually wants. Leah, anything on that? Slash, do you want to answer the second part of the question, which is like, okay, but how do we get, no, marching is nice. I'm reading into your question, Stephen. Marching is nice, protests are nice, but how do we actually get them to vote and volunteer?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so first of all, I have heard, and I encourage people to throw out ideas on this. I've heard a lot of people who use No Kings as a voter registration site or use No Kings as an opportunity to recruit people who will be doing voter registration, who will be door knocking, who will be part of the canvassing. Because a lot of times, maybe the folks who come out to the protest are already registered to vote. But if they came out to a protest on a Saturday, that means they might come out and do something else next Saturday. And so actually having a really effective on-site recruitment apparatus to get those folks involved in the election pushes over the course of the spring, that could be one of the really, that could be one of the things that you plan in advance, right? When we talk about sort of do a what's next meeting, think about what your own priorities are and think about how you're going to use No Kings to successfully absorb those folks as the next cadre of volunteers for whatever is happening in your area, whether that is an election that is coming up or whether that is a need to move people into immigrant defense or both.
That's great. Carl asked a question, and I want to raise it because it's Carl from Indivisible Minnesota 3, and we love our Minnesota groups. Three-time No Kings host. I'm going to summarize, and we've kind of covered this already, Leah, but there's this issue that we're seeing with No Kings of how do we get participants to actually sign up on Mobilize? And
Yeah.
what I would say, Carl, is all over the country, this is something we're seeing is that a
Yep.
lot of people don't RSVP for a protest. And Leah, you covered this a bit earlier. I don't know if there's more you want to say. It's this complex message that,
Yeah.
look, you don't have to sign up for a protest. Nobody's going to check your card or your registration. We all know that. And also, it's legitimately
Yeah.
helpful. If you
Yeah.
RSVP,
Yeah.
it helps us organize. It helps us know who to expect. It helps us follow up. It helps make the protest matter because we can then loop you into future organizing. So I feel your pain, Carl. I do accept that it is always going to be the case that a fraction of people who attend protests are actually going to RSVP.
Yeah. I will circling back to this gives me a chance to call out one of my all-time least favorite phenomenons in the ecosystem, which is the scam packs that
Oh
also
God,
really
yes.
actively,
They're the
buy
worst.
buy people's emails, buy people's phone numbers,
Hmm.
bother you with all of these fundraising solicitations. There's an ongoing.
I get emails from somebody, Leah, and the subject line is always "No Kings!" exclamation point, and I've never heard of these people. They're just
Yeah.
like fundraising off of it. It's so frustrating.
I mean, there is an active set of organizations that contribute absolutely nothing to No Kings and text large numbers of people with lists that they've purchased and ask, "Are you coming to No Kings? RSVP here."
Yeah.
And the RSVP link actually goes to a survey where they ask you for money. It does not
Yep.
go to an
Yep. Yep.
RSVP to No Kings. So there's a real like scam problem going on in the ecosystem on this front. We've been trying to figure out some ways to do anything about it. It's pretty tough. We're doing our best. We're not going to fix it on any timeline here.
There was a good recommendation in the chat, and I wondered why folks just didn't do this. Create a burner account. You can set up a
Yeah,
Gmail account for free, costs nothing. Make it your No Kings Carl account.
yeah,
Set it up and sign up for No Kings that way. If you don't ever want to use it again, you don't have to, or you could treat that as your like organizing political account, and you could go check it when you want to see if people are reaching out to you.
Yeah, and more generally, like this, I recognize this
Or
is not an
sorry, I said
answer.
Gmail. Sorry, I said Gmail, but people are correcting me. It doesn't have to be Gmail. It could be any kind of email account, Proton or something else as well.
Right, and this is not actually a fix for Carl's problem, which is a real one, but I would say that that kind of scam phenomenon is not gonna go away until people stop giving to
Yep,
those
yep,
kinds of solicitations. So, do not give to an entity that texts you for the first time and says, "We urgently need money to win the house." Do not
yes.
let your family give to those entities. Educate people on the fact that, real trustworthy organizations will have, like, a website where you can see who is doing what, and will talk to you about the programs that they run and won't just kind of hit you up with like, you must give tonight or else your donation's gonna, we're all gonna die. That stuff is not okay. So that's one thing, not actually responsive to the question, but it is an opportunity to get up on one of my hobby horses. I would say in general that the best ways to get people to give you their information to register and mobilize is to communicate really clearly the value proposition of doing so for them. Because of this cynicism, because of this fear, telling people, Carl, like something like what you said here in as many words, which is, if you give us your contact information, that allows us to reach out to you with additional information about the logistics and any updates if things change on short notice. That can be helpful, and that might, up the number of people who are willing to give, because people just don't understand why this might be useful to them. They think it's another attempt to just get their email address. So trying to communicate forthrightly about like, this is why we need you to do it might help at the margins. On the broader level, we just got to tackle this overall level of, scam and cynicism about giving your email address to people.
This is a place where I would love to see more leadership in the Democratic Party. And I don't have that
Hmm.
many ideas for what the Democratic Party needs to do. I think there are a lot of things, but I think one place I would love to see them lean in and actually try to crush these scam packs, because
Yeah.
I think it burns people out. It just makes people think it's all bullshit and they shouldn't engage. I'm not asking for people to give us money here, but I will just note, and legitimately, I would vastly prefer you to engage in No Kings right now and to register your events and recruit people to events. But I will just note, Indivisible, just for the record, has never sold any email that we've ever gotten. We do
Yep.
not sell our email address. We do not share our emails with other people. That is not something we do. We do not purchase emails from other people.
Yes.
That is just a practice that we believe really strongly in. This includes when we're doing, sometimes we do fundraise splits. So you donate $10 and $5 goes to Indivisible, $5 goes to Peggy Flanagan or something. We then don't share those emails either, because if you want to be on somebody else's list, we think you will get on their list. And we just do not want to, we don't want to poison the system more.
Yeah,
The most important
that's
thing
right.
is that people believe it's worthwhile to engage. As much as and Indivisible depends on grassroots donations for everything we do, I, I want people engaged in organizing. So if there's one thing you do, it shouldn't be donating to anybody. If there are two things you do, it probably shouldn't be donating to anybody. The number one thing you can do in this moment is start organizing locally. Sign up to be part of your local Indivisible group. You can join national too, but your local Indivisible group, and recruit more people in your own community. I'm sorry nobody's going to make a buck off of that, but I do think it will do more for democracy than signing some petition or giving some money to some fly-by-night operation. With that said, Leah, was that the plan? Did we
I
just
think
cover the
that's the
plan?
plan.
That's the plan, y'all. Okay, this is been a pleasure, as always. Been a pleasure. We are going to be here again next Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern time, as always. As a reminder, you have until Thursday, March 26th, to register your historic No Kings 3000 event for March 28th. You have until March 28th to give the gift of an invitation to this historic protest in your community, to people in your community, your friends, your family, your colleagues. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be very powerful. Trump is going to hate it. Too bad. So sad. We're going to show up in force, and we are going to win. Thanks,
And
everybody. Oh,
And
there's
if
more.
I
Leah,
have
tell
more,
us.
oh, we always have an extra ask. And if you are organizing an event and you have not started thinking yet about a post-event follow-up meeting, a what's
Yes,
next meeting that you can recruit people to at the event, start talking with your friends, your other hosts about getting that on the books right now.
that's right.
More
That's
to
right.
come.
Because the goal is to make it huge and then absorb as much of this movement
Mhm.
energy as possible and put it to productive use on the ground. Leah, great addendum. Y'all, we will see you next week, and we will see you out there for No Kings. Until then, that's the plan.
That's the plan.